Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live episode edition of the Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things podcast show. I'm your host, Carrie Roberts, and today my special guest is Tom Gerencer. Welcome, Tom. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Carrie.
So we're going to be talking about your journey as well as you're going to give some tips about writing. You're a professional writer, but I want to go back to the beginning. Do you remember the first thing you ever wrote, and what was it? And what age were you?
Yeah, the first thing I ever wrote was in first grade. I was trying to write a novel. I loved Charlotte's Web back then, and I decided I would write one just like that. And I wrote it in crayon, and I think I got about 2 pages into it before I realized, hey, this is hard work. I can't do this.
What did you start to write? Did you make it like an animal type of story?
Oh, it was almost exactly the same as Charlotte's Web. Yeah, it was. I was like, well, I don't know how to make up my own story, so I'll just use this one. And I started writing it, and I wrote. In the first grade, you can't write too much, so I remember I was like, man, every letter is hard, and it was crayon, and I got, like I said, I think it was like a page and a half or 2 pages, and I finally said, there's no way I think there's like 200 pages in this thing or 100 pages in this thing. I just can't do this.
Yeah. And so, in first grade, did you understand that you could be a writer, or you just were like, I want to try this? Did you have any experience or understanding of what writing was at a young age?
Yeah, no, I just figured it was like, hey, you just put words down on paper and you do it long enough and then you have a book. And so as naive as a first grader could be, I didn't really have a handle on what was going on yet, but at least I had the right spirit.
And so, I was looking at your LinkedIn and I saw, kind of fast forwarding a little bit, that you went to college for writing and English, but then you actually a little bit later started doing kind of a video company. So I'm curious, what made you want to study writing, but then kind of get into video initially?
Well, being a writer, when I first went to college, I went for engineering, and I washed out of that. That was another thing that I thought, well, this is just too hard. And probably in retrospect, I should have stuck with it. I mean, you stick with engineering, it's 4 years. It seems like forever when you're that age, but when you're older, it doesn't. But then when I went back to school a little while later, I decided I was going to be a creative writing major because that's what I had wanted to do anyway. But I figured, well, I got to do engineering to make money, and then I can write on the side afterward. Well, once I decided engineering wasn't for me, I thought, well, I better go back to writing because that's what I've always wanted to do anyway. So I told my father, I said, I'm majoring in creative writing, and he said, well, that sounds practical. And it turns out he was pretty right I think now he was right. I mean, there's some people who are talented enough, they can do that sort of thing right out of school. I think now it's better to have other experiences and another type of training, another degree, and then you can use that to inform your creative writing, like John Grisham did. He was a lawyer first, or Michael Crichton, he was a doctor first. It's good to have some kind of real world experience and not just be writing based on being a creative writer. But not nothing against people who want to do it the other way. But then, I went back to school for that, and then decided after I got out of there that I would pursue a Watson Fellowship, which was a 1-year overseas fellowship to study anything in the world you want. They gave you back then, now it's a lot more, but back then it was $15,000, which is a heck of a lot of money for me back a long time ago as a young college graduate. And I spent a year where I went overseas and studied radio theater, and worked with the BBC and with a little tiny radio production company that made radio commercials, and actually got way more responsibility in the little tiny company that made radio commercials. Anytime you go to a giant company, they let you sharpen the pencils. If you go to a tiny little company, they're like, okay, you're in charge of writing all our radio commercials now. So I did that, and I wrote some radio dramas. I adapted. They had me adapt the several Bible stories, like 6 hours of Bible stories for radio drama. They had me write all the scripts and a bunch of radio commercials. I don't know. And we got actually shortlisted. One of my ads got shortlisted for a national award by the BBC. And it was on the 5 easy ways to renew your TV license, because you have to have a TV license in the UK. But so I did that, and then came back home and just decided I was going to be a raft guide, because I decided I didn't want anything to do with that. So it was too hard. I had to be, in order to be in like marketing or that kind of thing in the US back then, I would have had to go to Boston or New York, and I just had no interest. So after all that, I started waiting tables, and then I became a raft guide, and I traveled all over the world and kayaked on some of the most beautiful rivers all over the world, and just had a really good time. And my parents would always kind of ask, what are you going to do with your life? And I was like, I don't know. Eventually, I'll start writing, I guess.
So wait, how old were you at this point when you started doing all the rafting?
I started doing all the rafting at about age 26. Actually, I took a job for about a year for the American Skiing Company, writing radio commercials for them. And then that didn't work out. I didn't enjoy that. And I decided, well, for the summer, I'm going to go raft guide. And then I got it. That basically, I used to tell people it ruined my life. I basically started raft guiding, and it was so much fun. And then I started kayaking. And that was so much fun that I didn't really want to do anything else except, ski in the winter and kayak and raft guide in the summer. So it started out when I was about 26, 27, and went up until it was about age, what was I, about 33, I guess. And so did that for for several years. And in the course of that, the video came in because I was raft guiding and kayaking, and I realized it's a whole lot more fun to shoot the whitewater video than it is to be in the raft with the rafting guests. I got a little tired of the guests after a little while. I think that's just natural. You're around the same kind of people all the time. They have the same questions all the time. They're great people, but it just gets kind of to be a tiring routine. And so I realized, hey, it's way more fun to just be in my own kayak, have a video camera stuffed in the kayak in between my legs in a waterproof bag, kayak down these class 4 and 5 rivers, and get out on shore and film the rafts coming through and people crashing, and edit it all together and make this video, for which they paid me $75 a day. And I thought, this is fantastic. I'm making money for just the most fun I've ever had in my life. But then, it kind of became time to grow out of that. And I thought, well, I don't know how to do anything. I didn't do anything good with school. I don't have any talent. I don't have any kind of skills or anything. I don't know what to do. And then I thought, well, you know what? I know how to make a video. I know how to, I've made a video every day now for the past 5 years. I know how to shoot a video, and I do know how to write. And nobody seemed to want to pay me to write very much. But once you put writing together with video, like everybody who has a keyboard thinks, well, I can write. I don't need to hire a writer. I know how to write. I can type on this keyboard. I can write. But the second you put that together with video, suddenly it was magic. People said, well, I don't know how to do that. So if you know how to write and make a video, then that's something we'll pay you for. Well, it turned out doing the exact same thing that I was doing for $75 a day, people would pay me for that $1,500 a day for that right away. So
what year was this when you were doing that, when you started it?
This was in 2004. I think 2000, maybe 2002 or 2004. I don't know.
This is before social media and the need for video in that sense. So what were people normally using these videos and writings for?
Well, the first one I got hired for was a consultant needed a video to promote his business. And he had made this little video called Toast Kaizen, which was about process improvement for manufacturing companies, where he demonstrates process improvement by making toast and then looking at the inefficiencies in the process and making toast again. And it was a clever little video, and he hired me to make a half-hour version of it. It was a little 5-minute video. He hired me to make a half-hour version of it, and I did. And he ended up selling it, and he ended up selling, I think he told me, 30 million copies of it by this year. He has sold 30 million copies of it for $100 each. So, and he paid me about $1,000. So, that also clued me into, well, there's a lot more money to be made here than just, letting somebody pay you for the one-off. But he's a great guy. I still do work for him. In fact, I'm writing a book for him right now based on his video. But But so it was that, and then there was the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation in New Hampshire called me and said, hey, we have a motorcycle charity event. Would you like to come and shoot a one-day video of it? And can you shoot a video and show it on the same day? Well, I've been doing that for years for rafting companies. So I said, absolutely. And they said, well, we can only afford to pay you $1,500. And I said, well, that okay. I used to make, a couple of weeks ago, I was making $75 a day for that. That's fine. So I did that for them for years, and then just picked up more and more clients and built this over the next 8 years, built this really strong video production business where I was doing all the writing, all the shooting, all the editing, all the voice work, and then ended up hiring more shooters to come in and editors. But it was going great guns. I was living up in Maine, where I'm from, and it was fantastic. It was the most money I'd ever made in my life. I was having an absolute blast at it. And I started to get a little bit arrogant. I started to think I can do anything, like nothing. I started thinking, you know, I'm brilliant, which is anytime you find yourself thinking that, check yourself into Betty Ford or something. Go. I mean, you know, go somewhere and get a reality check. Calm down, because that is the worst possible thing. If you start having some success and you start thinking that's the worst possible thing you could think. It led to some extremely dark times. Not anything to do with substance abuse or anything like that. I'm not kidding myself that I was like Elton John or anything. I was a video producer in New England. But I started thinking I was so smart because I was like, hey, I'm working. I've kind of beaten the system. You know, I'm working from home. I drive around to these factories and I shoot these videos and I shoot wedding videos and I make a bunch of money and people love the work that I do. And the only thing missing from my life is that I can't go wherever I want. I have to keep coming back to New England, not even Maine where I lived. I had to keep going to Massachusetts in order to shoot the videos, to go back up to Maine to edit them. And I thought, well, I'm smart enough. I can figure a way to get out of that. And I can basically live anywhere I want. I actually, after my parents died, I actually traveled around the country a lot and lived in different places to see where I wanted to be, and found out that West Virginia, paradoxically, and to my surprise, was the place that I wanted to live, which I wouldn't have thought. You know, I lived out in Oregon. I went out to Oregon and visited there. I lived in Montana. I lived in Boise, Idaho, which is a fantastic town. You know, it's got skiing and whitewater. I checked out all these really cool places, and I thought, well, I'm going to live somewhere out west. But I ended up making a spreadsheet of all the places I lived, and I reduced each place down to a single number based on the amount of really fun days I'd be able to have there each year, even after I was married and had kids. And, you know, I had to think about, well, you can only get away for a few hours. And West Virginia came out, like, on a scale of 1 to 100, West Virginia came out to like an 87. And I think the closest place behind that was like a 65, which then there was like 10 places on the list. And I thought, this doesn't make any sense. And I kept refiguring it. And I finally realized the thing with West Virginia is that the drive times are so short, and you've got we've got the best whitewater in the country here. It is.
I've been whitewater rafting there. It's great there.
Oh, where'd you go?
I don't remember. I lived in Northern Virginia for a while, and we did like a couple day trips to do whitewater rafting. Harper's Ferry. That okay. Area. I don't remember which. It was just in that area. I don't remember which course it was, but
I'm not actually familiar with it. My wife and I have lived here for like 8-9 years now, but it wasn't the Gauley River, was it, or the New River?
I don't think so. I don't know. I'll have to look. But yeah, I mean, I was such a blast. I mean, and it's like you said, it's got a lot of great rivers there if you love that sort of thing.
Yeah, and even better in the area that we're from, which is Fayetteville, which is where in the fall you might see them jump off the bridges, the big bridge there with the parachutes on TV. We live about a mile from that bridge, but it was so much fun here, and you know, you can live here and you can be so close to year-round whitewater, which was the big thing. Like if I lived out west, you know, there's going to be a shoulder season. There's no shoulder season in West Virginia. Mm-hmm. It's all the time great whitewater. So decided I wanted to live here. My wife and I ended up moving here and really liking it. And the only problem was there was no clientele like there was up in Maine. I could drive to Boston 3 hours away, shoot for, you know, Raytheon and HID and ASML and all these great big companies and worldwide companies, shoot video for them and then drive home again and edit it in Maine and be like, this is the life. Well, down in West Virginia, there was no real option like that. There was no 3 hours away giant city with tons of clientele where I could go and do this kind of thing. And so I struggled, and I ended up going through a very dark time, actually. And it was a strain on our marriage. I wasn't making any money at all. I tried a business idea, trying to make safety videos and sell those. And I had a little bit of success, but nothing that I could make a living on. And it got to the point where I realized I'm going to have to go and take, a minimum wage job somewhere, because suddenly here we are a few years later, I've burned through the savings that I earned through my business up in Maine, my video production business. Now we've got a kid on the way, and I have no income. And it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. I knew my wife was going to be a stay-at-home mom. She was working at a bank as a teller supervisor. And I knew, like, we're headed down a road here, and there's a brick wall at the end of it. And there's a giant or else now. And I realized at that point how arrogant I had been to think, like, I can live anywhere and make a great living. I'm so smart. I'm brilliant. And I realized, no, I'm just a normal person. I'm not brilliant at all. Like, guess what?
We appreciate the honesty on this show. And I'm glad you're talking about this, because I think so far in your story, it sounds like you're pretty organized, you're pretty adventurous. Things have kind of worked to your favor. And I just want to go back to that first, because before we talk about this, when you're talking about like the video stuff and people were calling you, was that just happening, or were you, putting yourself out there, doing any marketing, networking? Like, how did that initially happen in the beginning?
Oh, that's actually kind of hilarious. I don't think you could do this exactly today, because, the internet now is such a battle. But back then it was like nobody was there. And so I went online and I thought, well, what am I going to do? The first thing I did is I went to a bridal show in Portland, Maine. And I made, I think I shot like, I called a bunch of videographers and I said, hey, I want to work for you. And I called like 20 of them. And hey, I want to work for you. Hey, I want to work for you. Hey, and they all said, no, and hung up the phone. And number 20 actually said, why don't you just hang out a shingle on the internet of your own and start a video production business? And I said, okay. He said, that's what I did. That's what everybody you're calling did. And I went, oh, that's the most valuable piece of it. I'm so glad I called all these 20 people, because I finally got that piece of advice. And so, one of the people I had called actually said, yeah, you can come down and shoot a couple videos for me. Well, he ended up not paying me for the work that I did for him. And then I was calling him and saying, are you going to pay me? You said you're going to pay me $400. And he kept saying, oh yeah, I'm going to. And he finally said, look, I'm not going to pay you. Here, I have this guy. I can't shoot his wedding video. I'll just give him to you. And so the guy called me and I said, I've never shot a wedding video before. I've only done this like for practice. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll do it for you for cheap. And he said, how much? And I said, I don't know, $600. And he said, sold. And so I did it for him. And I think I had like 2 other clients that whole summer. And then that winter, I used the video I shot there to make a demo reel, which I was good, because I've been shooting rafting videos for 5 years and I knew how to get a shot. I knew I had gone out on a road trip to California when I was younger with a friend of mine whose uncle was Alan Davio, the cinematographer for Empire of the Sun and E.T. and Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think. But so, and he told me, he said, he was like, we were like 20-year-old kids. And he said, let me just say the best piece of advice I can give you about filming, which I never thought I would use, but he goes, best piece of advice I can give you about filming is, if a shot hurts, use it. And so I always thought about that, like, how do you make it hurt? And as silly as it sounds, like once I got into whitewater video, I just always tried to make everything look painful. not in a like an oh, that's a horrible shot way, but just in like a, oh, that really kind of sticks in your head because that's a different shot. And so so then when I got into video production, I did the same thing. When I got into wedding video, I just thought, what's the coolest angle I can shoot this from? And what's the, oh, that really hurts, every time. And I would just leave the viewfinder open all the time and be like, oh, that hurts. That hurts. That's great. And I thought of that quote from him all the time. Unfortunately, he just passed away from COVID-19 a few weeks ago, sadly. But anyway, so I was doing that and then, booked 12 wedding videos based on that bridal show, because I just had a TV up and a bunch of business cards, and the brides would walk by and say, "Oh, that's really different. You know, you're good. This is good. I want to hire you." And so I signed up 12 of them. I think I signed like 30 or 40 of them to this sheet, and then sent them all a demo reel that they could have. And then 12 of them booked and sent me $400 each of retainer fee. And then I was set back then. That was like a ton of money for me. And I worked all summer on that. And then I had a little website that I just put up. I made it myself, and it wasn't that great a website, but I got my first corporate client off that as well a few months later. And things just snowballed from there. I never really made the website that much better. I made it a little bit better. I never got much business off the website. It was just those initial few brides I got from basically networking and cold calling people, and then the bridal show. And then I got this consultant off of that website. He somehow found my website, miracle that it was. And then through him, I got, I don't know, dozens and dozens of other corporate clients, like just dozens. And he, every time I made a video for him, he made a lot of money off it. So he just kept hiring me to make videos.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying, which we hear a lot on this show, which is always why I like to go back and stop and make sure you say it, is you did the work. You tried, like you said, you made 20 phone calls, you heard a piece of advice, you tried something, you did something, start getting referrals, which works. And on a side note, Tommy Hood says it was the Shenandoah River, by the way. So that must have been where he thinks that I went. So maybe that's what it was. Thank you. We appreciate it.
He's a great friend of mine. He's a video boater as well.
Oh, okay. And, so he knows. Thank you. He knows. We appreciate it, Tommy. Yeah. So let's go fast forward now again, where you were just talking about. So now you, like you said, you have kind of this inflated ego a little bit for a little while. You've done so well. You moved to West Virginia. Did you decide to get rid of these clients, even though they were in Boston, or keep them? Or were you like, I'm just going to find new people here? What was kind of happening at that point?
Yeah, I was so arrogant that I said, I'm gonna cut all ties. I'm not gonna be flying back to Boston from West Virginia. That would be too much of a hassle. I'm just gonna go to West Virginia and start something completely new, and I'll be fine. And which now I would never do that again in my life, because I know I look back now and I'm like, yeah, well, of course you were able to do this thing. You spent years working at it and building it up and having ideas, going in the wrong direction, realizing that doesn't work, sitting down with my journal and writing like, oh, this isn't working. What do I do now? I think I'll try this. And you try another thing, you keep trying little things. And then eventually you get to a place where it's starting to work, and you start putting more effort in that area, and it starts snowballing and snowballing. Yeah, of course it works. It's nothing to do with being brilliant. It's just to do with being persistent and networking. And that's all it is. And then,
wait, that is all it is, but it's hard. Persistent and networking, plus the consistent action you were taking, like you said, the time, the patience of doing that. And I think that's really important for people to hear, because it doesn't just happen overnight. So I like that you realize that yourself at that point.
Well, don't break your arm, pat me on the back, because to have to go through, I think it was like 5 years of no money, of no income, to have to go through that in order to learn that lesson, that it's like, oh no, it's really just all about persistence and networking. To have to not make that connection first before I had to go through 5 years of ever deeper, darkness and like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I make this work? And no, that's not not anything I would pat myself on the back.
But I think what you're saying, every single one of us has been through exactly what you're talking about, is going through it now or will go through it, which is this idea of like, something was working and now it's not. And what am I doing wrong? And what do I need to do to make something happen or work? So can you talk a little bit about your process where you kind of shifted, because now you're a full-time writer, you focus primarily on the writing. What was kind of the shift for you that you did initially that led you to kind of where you're at now?
Well, first it was realizing that the business I was working on to sell safety videos wasn't working, and that I had to do something else because my wife was pregnant and we had a kid on the way, and I got to do something. We either got to move out of West Virginia into a city, which I did not want to do because I love it here, or I've got to find some way to make money here that's not minimum wage, because I just didn't want to bring a family into that kind of existence. So I started thinking, well, the only thing I know how to do that's not got anything to do with video is write. And I know that in the past, I've always said, I was always real proud of, nobody would pay me to be a writer. But the minute I put it together with video, like I told you, suddenly it's magic and nobody knows how to do it. And they would pay me for it. So I suddenly thought, well, that's the only thing I have left. I'm here in the middle of the woods in West Virginia, in a town of 5,000 people, probably. I don't never really looked, but I think it's like 5,000 people. The middle of nowhere, great outdoor lifestyle. As a friend of mine, John Esker, says, California activities, Appalachia prices. But it's fantastic. But you can't really make a living here unless you like piece something together. And so I thought, well, the only talent I really have, if you don't even want to call it a talent, the only kind of skill I have is writing. So I started going around to rafting companies and saying, hey, will you pay me to write for you? And a couple of them said, yeah. And I wrote some stuff for them, but it wasn't steady work and it wasn't real fulfilling and it was real hard. And, now the clock is ticking, the baby's getting closer, and I'm thinking this just isn't working. And I'm putting out, I'm going on Facebook and I'm going on LinkedIn and saying, hey, I'm available for hire. I'm a writer. I do this stuff, and wasn't getting much traction. I was getting a little bit here and there, but it just was like money was kind of trickling in, nothing. And I kept thinking about, why did I leave that video production business up in Maine? And actually one of my biggest employee, my chief employee, who when I left, I said, look, just, you can have the business. I'll sell it to you for $1. Just take it, because, he was a great guy and there was no point in me trying to make money off it. I mean, I could have set something up where he paid me some kind of like retirement or something, but I was like, there's no point in that. I'm smart enough. I'll figure this out. And again, I was pretty arrogant, but he ended up calling me at one point and saying, hey, I got to ask you a question. And this is when I was like making no money. What do I do with all my money?
You were like, not now.
I was like, the first thing you do is do me a favor. Don't ever call me again and ask me what to do with all your money. And I told him what I was going through, and he was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. But so this whole writing thing wasn't working. Well, I ended up talking to a friend of mine. And again, networking is everything. Even if networking is not going to get you a job, but it will give you ideas, and ideas are gold in this situation. So I call this friend of mine who's a novelist, and I'm talking to him, and he goes, oh yeah, he goes, man, I'm finally making a full-time living off fiction. I'm making 6 figures off my novels. And I said, wow, I'm so jealous. And he goes, yeah, I don't have to do any corporate writing anymore. And a little light bulb went on in my head, and I said, well, when did that happen? And he said, oh, just like last month, I just ditched my last corporate client. And so I said, okay, well, does your last corporate client need somebody to fill your shoes? And he said, actually, yeah, I think they do. And so I said, can you put me in touch with them? And he said, yeah, sure. So he put me in touch with this person, and the person said, yeah, I'll hire you. I'll pay you $40,000 a year, which back then I was like, awesome, great. To write, you're going to have to write 11,500 words of finished copy with images included every week and all year long. And for that, I'll pay you $40,000, which I was like, okay, that's a lot of writing, but fine. So I started doing it. I just started writing. And that was 2 weeks before my first son was born.
As I'm listening to your story, I think again, Tom, what you do so well in just the few minutes I'm meeting you here for the first time really is you listen really well, and you pick out those moments or those questions or those things that just seem to tick for you. And then you run with it. You say, what can I do with it? Can I take that role, or can I create something? And I congratulate you on doing that, because I think that's a really great skill to have. And it seems to have served you very well.
Desperation is a fantastic teacher. When you're desperate, it takes me back to when I was first learning to whitewater raft guide, and I would ask every raft guide, how do you do this? How do you do that? How do you do this? How do you do that? Until they were like, stop asking us questions. Just guide and you'll learn. But I was like, I was so nervous that I was just asking all these questions. And it was the same thing in my early writing career. I just wanted to ask everybody, like, how do you do this? How does this work? It'd be just out of desperation, out of like knowing, out of finally, thank God, understanding I am not brilliant. I'm not
Mhm.
that clever. I need to learn as much as I possibly can. There's, what is it? Is it LeBron James? I want to say, I might have this totally wrong, but somebody was watching him practice and they said, why are you doing all these completely basic drills? These really basic, like dribbling drills, and doing like, 100 foul shots or 150 foul shots in a row in the morning, first thing. And he's like, you're so good. Why are you doing that? And he's like, no, you've got it backwards. That's why I'm that good, because I'm never going to stop doing the basic drills. So maybe there's something to be said for just acknowledging that there's nothing magical about you, no matter how good you're doing, and that you really need to ask, how do I do this, over and over again, and try to figure it out as hard as you can.
Yes, I agree. And Shane Morgan says, Tom is great at listening and processing. So I assume he knows you pretty well. And yeah, I mean, just from this conversation, we're hearing that. And I just wanted to just read something that you had said to me. So you've been a professional writer now. You're a professional writer full-time now. Yep. And you've written for some very high-level organizations, whether they're clients of yours or you work with them. And I was just looking for some of these stats that you gave that I thought were pretty impressive that you did, I think, in the last few years. And a couple of them are that you grew traffic for a money lifestyle blog from 0 to 800,000 in 18 months. Yep. You grew traffic for a medical blog from 8,000 to 45,000 in 40 days. And you helped grow a career blog from 1 million to 3.5 million in 18 months. So again, really impressive numbers. And I'm curious, when you start with something like that, do you have a strategy or process for what you're going to do? Do you look at the whole company? Are you looking at what they're doing and then you start writing? What's kind of that beginning process when you have something like that?
Depends on the client. The first one was the one where I told you I started out making $40,000 a year for, and they just said, we've got a brand new blog, we've got zero traffic, write articles, get us traffic. And they kind of gave me a free rein, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I just started writing articles and started seeing that I wasn't getting any traffic. And so started kind of varying my approach and trying different things, and eventually was seeing some of these things are really working and started doing more of that and making more traffic. The second one was when I lost that gig 2 years later, about 2 weeks before our second child was born, and was like, I have no idea how to get another client. I don't know what to do now. So I ended up, talking to, again, networking is everything. I ended up talking to a writer friend I met through this first blog. And I said, are you scared? What are you going to do? The blog closed. What do we do now? And she said, oh, this is not my first rodeo. I'm not worried. I'll get more clients. And I said, okay, how? And she said, well, I'm just going to go on ProBlogger and, ProBlogger.com and start looking at the ads posted there and start trying, applying to everything I see. So I did the same thing and ended up getting this client that was a medical waste disposal firm. And they said, we've got 8,000 readers a month. We want to get more. Can you grow our traffic? And I said, sure. And by then I knew something. After a couple of years of doing this, I knew some things about search engine optimization and getting traffic and writing content that gets traffic. And so what I did is I went on to semrush.com. It's a great search engine tool, search engine marketing tool. You pay $99 a month, and then I went on there and I had a strategy to, I don't know how detailed do you want me to get into this?
We love detail on this. I think, okay. A lot of people that don't know you that are looking for their own business of how do I do this? Yeah. I think it's curious, to hear kind of your process, and then we'll kind of go through, some tips and skills that you have for other people as well.
Sure. So I had never done any medical writing before. So for them, I didn't know what to do. So I went on semrush.com, and they're a keyword research tool, but they're also a search engine marketing research tool. And I just typed in this blog's URL into their search box, and it delivered, the semrush.com delivered a list of like 1,000 websites it thought were their competitors based on, it goes and looks at the existing website, and then it goes and looks at the pages that website has, and then it looks at the other websites that have similar pages, And then it says, okay, here's your competition. And so I went and looked at the competition. I took each competition website, which if you're starting a new site and you don't have any pages yet, just pick who you think is your ideal competitor and then plug them into SEM, pay $99 for 1 month, plug them into SEMrush.com, come up with it's going to give you way too many competitors, but pick the top 100 traffic earners and then go and look. You can go in SEMrush.com and click on each one of those and see here are their top 10,000 or 1,000 pages or whatever, blog posts or whatever. And it'll show you how much traffic it thinks each one is getting. And you can see their number 1 page is based on this topic and the number 2 page is this topic. And here's roughly how much traffic they're getting from each one. And you can go and look at that and say, okay, well, I guess I should be writing these pages. And you can even take that one step further, do a little bit more nuance and say, which of these are harder to compete on and which of them are easier to compete on. You can do it right in SEMrush.com. You can also go to Moz.com and get their browser extension, the Moz bar, which will let you see if you take MedPro Disposal, one of their biggest competitors was Becker Hospital Review. So I went and looked at maybe their first topic was sharps or something like that, how to avoid needle sticks, let's say. I'm making that up. That's not what it was. But so I go and Google how to avoid needle sticks and up comes, Google's 10 billion pages or whatever it is. But the top 10 that you see on that first page, the Moz bar will actually show you how tough each one is to compete against. So you can go in and say, okay, well, I'm going to pick the topics that are easy to compete on. If I've only got 20, if they're only going to pay me for 20 articles, I'll go and find the 20 easiest articles to compete on that get the most traffic. I actually built a Google spreadsheet where I had it do a 2-column sort where it would sort by the most traffic plus the easiest to compete on. And then I think I identified 1,000 topics and then I picked the top 20 that were both easy to compete on and had a lot of traffic. And I wrote 20 articles in the next 20 days off of those. And most of them ranked number 1 or number 2 and got tons of traffic. And they ended up, like you said, in 40 days, they had gone from 8,000 viewers a month to 45,000. So that is how I would go about that. If you've got a blog and you don't know what to write about, you're trying to get traffic, I would do that. I would also pay special attention to, are these going to be close enough to convert into sales for me? Are these articles just of interest, or are they what's called bottom of the funnel articles where people are I'm so ready to buy. I'm so ready to buy. I just need somebody to tell me what to buy. And then, you write those articles first. And you look also, and SEMrush.com will tell you how much a certain topic is worth. So some of them might be worth 0 and some of them might be worth $10 a click. So well, those are going to be closer to convert maybe, so I should pay more attention to those. So that's kind of what you do there. And then as far as Zeddy.com, they're a career site that I work for now, the one that has 3.5 billion unique page views a month. They have a whole SEO team, a whole content marketing team that picks the topics for me. So that's a whole different kettle of fish. They've already got this stuff going on. They just say, here, write the best article that's going to rank for this topic. And I go and do it.
How long, when you're writing an article and you're doing SEO, once you post it, how long would you say it takes to see it rank up? And how do you know if it's doing well or if it just takes more time for it to rank higher?
That depends heavily on what kind of site you have and what articles you already rank for. If you're going into something brand new, like the money site, when I first started, I was starting to write tax articles, which we didn't have any of. So it was hard to rank. And then after you write a certain amount of tax articles, then you start ranking for a few. It might take you 6 months to rank with your first article. If you keep writing articles for 6 months, you might start to see your first traffic. And in maybe 3 months, you'll start to see something. But it might take you 6 months for a brand new article to pop up. But then after you've got several articles ranking for a certain thing, once we were really going on that money site, I would write an article that was similar to the articles that I already wrote. And Google would say, oh, they know, this site knows what they're talking about when it comes to this topic. And we would rank in 3 days.
which is
So,
great. We have a question. If any of you are watching and you want to post a question, you can. Sula says, I write a blog on an ultra niche topic, opera education. Do you have any tips about how to reach a wider audience in a very selective niche?
how to reach a wider audience? That's tricky. A wider audience in a selective niche. So you're writing about opera education, and you want to reach. I'm guessing by wider audience. Oh, she just means more people who are interested in opera education. Is that
Yeah,
how you take that,
that's
Karen?
how I rate it. I think it's, how can you have more people that are interested in that area?
Yeah, I would do just what I said. I would go on semrush.com. I would plug your URL into semrush.com and look for your competition and look at what they're ranking. Look at the topics that they're ranking with, that they're getting traffic with. And I would start writing articles based on that you haven't thought of yet. That's basically the strategy I would take there, without sitting down with you and looking at your site and doing an analysis of what you've got already and so forth. But
And I want to also say, Casey Cunningham says, Tom is a writing wizard and a treasured import to West Virginia. I speak for the entire state of West Virginia when I say we are keeping him. Love it, Casey. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Yes.
And
Yeah. I think, Sula just clarified. She said, I don't think there is competition. So she actually was on the show before. So she is an opera singer. Her and her husband run an opera educational company trying to train opera singers. And so that's the question, when it's so niche, because I know even in Google Analytics, sometimes you look up things and things are so niche, how do you kind of find those people that are looking for it? Are they not searching for it? Do you change what you write? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I would start, if there's no competition for it, I would start, number one, looking at sites that do write articles about opera, sites that do write, opera blogs. I'm sure there's got to be some opera blogs out there, not necessarily opera education, but some opera blogs, and start seeing what do they rank for. And also just start, use your network, start talking to your students and asking them what kinds of things they're interested in, and just kind of brainstorm with them some is the best I can say for a topic that's so niche that there's no competition. Go to the opera blogs, and then also go to your students and talk to your network, and go on also reddit.com, reddit.com, the internet's front page, if you want to quote their marketing, or the internet's sewer if you want to quote my unprofessional opinion of it. But it's actually a great place to go and find opinions, and you can go there and find go there and Google different topics and read some of the comment threads, and read some people who are interested in opera, people who want to get into it but don't know how, and start seeing their frustrations, things that they're banging their heads against that they don't understand. And that will give you ideas for topics as well. And then, you want to go back into SEMrush and check, is there actually any traffic for this? Or you can use Google Trends too to analyze, like, does anybody actually care? I think people care about this, but does anybody else really care about this? You need to kind of, you don't want to start writing stuff that you're not really sure if it's going to make any traffic.
And you were saying earlier that there is a difference between writing for something like SEO is important, and are you just trying to attract for content, or are you trying to sell something? So can you give any tips or any thoughts for people, whether they are a professional writer or they are a one-woman show, and they want to write something that is going to convert? What is the difference in how you write that article?
There's not much difference, honestly. With content marketing, you're trying to, you're going to have a CTA in something that's trying to convert, and you're trying to pick your topic closer to the things that are making that, there's top of funnel, which in marketing, there's this marketing funnel, and the top of the funnel is people are just kind of so interested in this. And so you can write about just anything that's kind of interest and bring them in, and they'll be like, oh, maybe someday, maybe you get them to sign up for your email list, and then later, when they become bottom of the funnel people, when they're closer to buying, then you hit them with an email at the right time and they'll buy. Or if you're writing content that you've got to convert on, then you're trying to pick those bottom of the funnel topics, like Zeddy.com, the career site I work for. You want to be a career site, you want to be writing things that are like, if you're trying to, their product is a software as a service resume builder. So naturally, the best bang for your buck there is going to be like, well, how do I write a resume?
Mm-hmm.
Because if somebody's right there, that means they're about to buy. They're like, I'm going to write a resume right now. And you're like, great. So you write those kind of articles, as opposed to like, how do you answer like certain interview questions? Yeah, sure, those are great. Those people are going to care about that, but they're going to be a lot less likely to buy. So you want to think about that. But really, as far as content marketing goes, once you've figured that sort of difference out between the right topics and the wrong topics to write about, it just comes down to pulling in the eyeballs, and how you do that is actually the trick. Like how you pull in the eyeball, you pull in the eyeballs. You can't pull in the eyeballs with like a sales pitch, right? They're not gonna, if you're trying to do content marketing, you can't be like, here's my sales pitch online. Nobody wants to come and see that. You've got to give them some value. You've got to give them something in exchange for their time. You're selling them something. You're selling them, before you sell them a product, you have to sell them your article. And the way you sell them your article is by they're paying you for, or rather you're paying them for their time by creating something valuable. Never mind your product. You've got to make that article as valuable as you possibly can. That's the whole game that Google is trying to play. That's why people tend to misunderstand. For decades, or for at least a decade, probably 15, probably decades, people would try to game Google at first. They would say, well, we know that Google likes keywords, so we're going to stuff as many keywords as possible into our content. And then, people are going to come. And for a while that worked because Google was an algorithm based on keywords, and it's not that way anymore. Google has got, it uses dwell time, how long people spend on a page. It uses machine learning. It uses all kinds, which a lot of people argue with me and say dwell time isn't real, but I believe Google does definitely use that. Nick Frost, head of Google Brain in Canada, which is not Google, it's a machine learning outgrowth, but he said they use that. And then Google came on and walked it back and said he wasn't authorized to say that. That's not necessarily what we're doing. But just based on, over 1,500 articles written in the past 5 years, I think Google's definitely doing that. For 70 billion searches every day, it's doing that. And it's kind of like the most efficient voting booth in history. It knows, it's like Santa Claus, it knows if people like your article, and it knows if they don't like your article. So no longer can you figure out, how do I trick Google? That's the problem too with tricking Google, with like figuring out, well, what is Google doing and how do I please it? The problem with that mindset is Google is always changing its algorithm. And so, 70 times in the past 3 years, Google changed its algorithm, and what was working for you last month suddenly isn't working for you now. You lose a bunch of traffic. You do all this work, you get a bunch of traffic, and then you lose it. Well, you really need to learn how to think like Google. And right here, I can plug my, if I can plug my book.
Yes.
Think Like Google seems like the right place to say it. How to use SEO and empathy to rank, convert, and profit, no matter how much they change the rules. Because the reason that's the subtitle of it, is because if you can stop trying to please Google and start trying to do what it actually wants you to do, which is try to please the searcher, then Google is going to see that your articles please the searcher, and Google's going to rank you high. Now, you might then say, well, thanks a lot, Tom. All I have to do is write good content, and then I'm going to rank high. Like, everybody knows that. But the good news is that all these tools of SEO that people have developed over the years are some fantastic tools. If you use them in a counterintuitive way to build that empathy in your mind for your searcher, then you can become like 50 years ago, before there was any internet, you had the J. Jonah Jameson style editors up in the ivory towers who were, they could, a cub reporter would walk in and say, I got a story, chief. And the editor would look at it and say, it's garbage, nobody cares. Or they would look at it and say, it's sensational, it's page 1. Like, they just knew this stuff because they had this empathy in their gut for their readership. They understood their readership so well. And you and I don't have that, or maybe you do, but I personally don't tend to have that. Most people don't. That's why those kind of editors were rare and few and far between and made the big bucks back then. But today, the good news is that you can build that kind of empathy. You can simulate that through using the tools of search engine optimization. You can figure out, well, how do I empathize with my reader? What does my searcher want? You can't sit down and have a qualifying sales conversation with your searcher, unfortunately, for every article you're going to write, but you can simulate that by using SEO's tools to figure out what made my searcher sit down in front of this keyboard and type in this search term, and what drove them to that, what emotion drove them to that. And if you can tap into that emotion, you can then use other SEO tools to deliver the kind of antidote to that emotion, or to take their emotion and say, look here, I've got your solution.
I mean, it just goes back to, I feel like, this whole conversation we've had of you talking about the importance of really listening. What does somebody want? What does somebody need? Taking that and creating great content. I think when we think about things from a big picture standpoint, it is very simple. Like you said, create good content people want. But there are obviously certain things and tools that you have. And as you said, you have this book out. You've also had, some of your work featured in the Boston Globe, Fast Company, Costco Connection. Like you said, you have clients like Raytheon. For people that want to connect with you, if they want to purchase your book, they want to read more, they want to learn more either about you or about this topic, because there's a lot involved, where can they do that? Where's the best place?
Yeah, so the best place would be if you're interested in the book, go to Amazon.com, type in Think Like Google. It'll be the first thing that pops up. There's a paperback and there's a Kindle version. If you're interested in connecting, you can just email me at. Well, I was going to give out my website address, but I'll give out this one instead. It's tom.t.gerencer@gmail.com, and Gerencer is spelled Gerencer. So it's tom.t.gerencer@gmail.com, or you could certainly go get the book. So and I also have a website, which is tomgerencer.com.
Perfect. And he is on LinkedIn as well, if you want to connect with him professionally too. And the last question I like to ask all of my guests, Tom, is what is one word or quote or mantra that you try to live by every single day?
Man, that's a tough question. I don't know as I have one really. I think probably just this just popped into my head. This is not anything I think about by any means. But what just popped into my head is that silly quote from Dory, "Just keep swimming." I don't know why that jumped in my head. I don't think of that every day.
But I ask that question all the time. I was curious for you because you're a writer. I wasn't sure what you were going to say. And it's interesting. Some people choose a word, some a quote, some a mantra. Ben, some of they have it their whole life, and some it's that moment. But I think what you just said, "just keep swimming," again, really talks about your own journey. And I congratulate you for finding something you really enjoy, that you're great at, that you get to do, that you get paid well for, and now you're helping others. So thank you so much for sharing your story, your tips and insights. And I look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Thank you so much, Carrie. It was great talking to you and being on the show.